hear the train horn, one of us has to. Has to yell train. Has to.
You have to, yeah.
You don't get punished if you don't. It's just you subconsciously do it.
Mm-hmm.
Just like when you drive by a cow in the field, you have to be like, cow.
Yeah.
Like,
one.
My sister all the time. She's like, oh my God, look, there's a cow, and I'm like, shut up.
You wouldn't like riding in the car with me because you can ask, like every time, like cow, look at or if we pass a dog, look at the cute dog, and Mr. Don was like, is there a not cute dog? And
My
like, no.
sister was driving when she got her
There is
exam. She was
so.
driving with me in the car for the first time with like my stepmom and stuff, and there was a dog, and I was like, ooh, look, dog, and she almost crashed.
Yeah, don't look at that. All right.
Look, it's a horse.
Okay.
Horses are smart. They'll
Now-
just wake off. They'll pick up the legs and land on your windshield.
Yep.
Jeez. Okay. Now salary is not one we spend much time on because salary is kind of a little bit on the easier side. Where salary is just like what they get paid. They get paid. They don't get paid per hour. They get paid salary. So it's just like a flat rate for like the year or whatever it happens to be. So like I said, I work for salary, so it doesn't matter if I work, like I work extra hours at home. It's not like they pay me extra those nights, like for the nights that I do work at home.
On days where you don't do like really almost no work.
Right,
You
yeah.
still get paid.
So like tomorrow afternoon, when I only have like a few students here with me, they're not gonna be like, ooh, let's, dock her pay for that. Like there's days that are easier than others, so.
Yeah, we're definitely gonna dock you.
So that's just a flat rate as salary. But it's like kind of a guaranteed amount where hourly work, you don't show up for work for a day. Like so when I was homesick last week, if I had an hourly job, I wouldn't have gotten paid for those days. Whereas with salary, typically you get either sick days or vacation days, depending on your type of job. Like we don't really get vacation days as teachers because we have the summer, but we get sick days. So I can call in sick and say that I'm sick, but I can't like take a vacation and say, hey, I'm sick for 5 days, and then they see on Facebook that I've been in like Jamaica or something.
That's why
That's why you block them on Facebook.
No, that's why you make
That's why you don't have enough. That's why you don't use Facebook.
No, that's why you don't post anything.
Yeah. Twitter's
Don't post
Put
it
it
after you get done.
Then we talked about overtime, that you get your normal pay, but then for overtime, you typically get time and a half. So your normal hours for your regular pay, but then typically your pay gets multiplied by 1.5. Do that. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Struggle bus. So overtime could be also like we talked about, like kind of some of those hours that people don't want to work. Maybe there's a certain, they say I'll give you overtime pay if you work the weekend or whatever it happens to be. So just understanding if they say time and a half, that's what they mean by that 1.5. That's called time and a half.
I asked my mom how she makes she makes her whole work week's worth of pay in one day.
Yeah.
So usually we would start Saturday because she gets paid a whole week
Yeah.
extra.
Yeah, and it's just, again, we talked about that, like weighing the options, like, is it okay that, she has to miss, like, a get-together with family if she doesn't have to work the other days of the week or
That's
whatever.
if we have a get together, which usually doesn't happen.
All right, the next one is monthly. And this is talking about how we get paid. So if we're getting paid monthly, that means we get 12 paychecks per year. So if we're talking about what their yearly rate is, and I tell you the monthly amount, you'd multiply it by 12. So there's 12 paychecks in a year. So if I have a word problem talking about what's their salary, their pay per year, you should be able to figure that out because you would monthly pay and multiply it by 12. But I don't want you to see that and question or wonder what you're supposed to do with that. The next one is semi-monthly, and this is where you get paid 2 times per month and you get 24 paychecks in a year. Again, this is the way I get paid, so I get paid on the 15th and then typically the last day of the month. So like halfway through the month and then at the end of the month. Bless you.
Can the Zoom tape?
Huh?
And that sounds a lot like bi-weekly, but those are slightly different. The reason why bi-weekly is a little bit different
So you
is
get
because
every other week.
every other week, and some months have 5 weeks in the month, so there's some months that you might get a third paycheck, just depending on how the previous month fell. So bi-weekly is checks like every other week, so every 2 weeks.
So 26 paychecks a year. Roughly.
Yeah. And then finally, weekly, you get paid every week, but then you get 52 paychecks in the year. I'm going to rearrange my colors here. 52 paychecks in a year. And like I said, some jobs give you the option of choosing how you want to get paid. All right, we're going to flip to the back side.
Can I go to the bathroom?
Yeah. So we talked about piecework, and this is where we talked about like when you're like work for an assembly line or something like that, or in a factory, depending on how much work you do, so you get paid more if you're working harder than the person next to you. We talked about that being kind of fair, or whatever it happens to be. So there may be a different like schedule based off of how many items you put together. So they'll tell you like this range of values you get paid this amount. So the way to kind of write that down, I guess I don't have a good way to explain that. Pay per item and then the number of items produced. So pay per item times, this is multiply the number produced. So if you do 200 of something while somebody next to you does 150, you should probably get paid more.
Unless the boss likes me to get paid on the table.
Unless they're too lazy.
That's only counts if it's right.
And in our, like on our test, it'll say things like, we'll use words like commission. So if I say on the test, like, Clayton earned commission on his sales of $16,000, I would want you guys to know what commission means, that you wouldn't just like question like, what in the world is she talking about? Commissions, remember, like when you get paid something, like a real estate agent is typically paid on commission. So when I sell our house, we get, our real estate agent gets a percentage of what we sold our house for. So the percentage, but we want to do that as a rate. Are you going to cross country today or no? No, probably not. Yeah. Percent. But remember, as a decimal, so if it's a percent, we take the decimal and move it over 2 times. And that goes for probably most of these. And that's multiplied by the amount of sales. Now FICA, I'm going to give you that percentage on the test, but you can still write it down here. But remember, that's that Social Security. So I will put it on this, but I'll put it in the test. I won't try to make you like go and look it up just in case for some reason you used the sheet before then. So that's the percentage of Social Security we pay. So typically it's 6.2%. Now if you have your own business and you have to pay that yourself, you double that, but we don't have to worry about that here. And that comes out of your paycheck. So that's subtracted, so we're gonna call that a deduction. Even though someday Social Security will hopefully come back to you and benefit you, right now it just seems like a pain. It just comes off of our pay. And we saw that in that problem we did together a little bit ago here, that person, like over $1,000 of their gross income was gone for the month because of all these little government type things. The next one is Medicare. That's like insurance, again, for old people, disabled people, but we help pay into that. We would get that when we need it. And so that's 1.45%. That's also a deduction. We're nice to people about that. We don't make fun of the older people for you don't go to Gables in the Pond when you volunteer and be like, I'm paying your insurance. No.
Tax for all. Give me your money.
All right. Now these next two are the 2 charts we got yesterday. The wage bracket, in short, is the easier of the 2. That was like the first 2 pages of our chart that we did. So that was the one that based off the withholdings and if you're single or not, it's kind of a flat rate. So you don't have to take a percentage off, it just tells you the money. So this is, so the wage bracket method, you use the withholdings and then you find the amount deducted. The things we look at for this is if you're single or married. And again, the reason for that is because it's possible you know, there's 2 incomes coming together, but there's 2 people that are kind of using that pool of money most times. Your withholdings, and that's like usually has to do with your kids, and that's how much they'll take out more money or less money depending. And it also has to do with obviously your pay, and then how you're paid, so like weekly or monthly. But this is the easy way. I'm going to write easy. It's just kind of cut and dry. We can go look at what we're supposed to pay. But you method. So this is page 1 and 2 of our chart. Page 3 is the tough one. And like I said, I should have looked this up yesterday. I don't know which one, like how they decide which one to use at any given place. So this is page 3 on our chart, is the tax percentage withholdings. This is the one that's 4 steps. And I'll write down those steps here so you have them. So you use the top list and you multiply the withholding number and you multiply by the number on the top chart based on like weekly, so the allowance chart. Oops. So that's up here on the top. And again, if you wanted to write step 1 up there. I take my gross income and subtract step 1. I use that number to find the corresponding line on the ones below. And then finally, you follow the steps based off that row. So you follow the directions there. And as much as like you might say, I don't think I'll ever have to do this. Like I said, I've gotten paid for over 20 years and I've never had to do this. But learning how to like look at charts and be able to take information off of them, maybe not this chart in particular, but other ones, that's important to know how to do, that you're able to kind of like think on your feet and figure that out and follow some steps. And it gets better each time you do it. So anytime I do something for the first time, I mean the first time I did this, I was kind of like, what am I doing next? That's where we practice things. So, you know, that practice makes perfect idea. That's not too far off here. The final thing is this withholding tax from the state, and that's the last page. And typically we'd probably stick with Wisconsin since that's ours. Is just basically that there's a lot of states have either a flat rate or a rate depending on your income. So this is page 4. We talked about that pays for our state government. So that's like any kind of our state services. So our state parks, our state highways, those kind of things are paid for with our state taxes. And so that's just a percentage there. And again, all these taxes existed way before we were ever around. So this is not any one, you know, government official deciding. I mean, obviously they change percentages, but for the most part, I think most people agree that we probably have to have taxes as much as they're annoying. They need to have, like if we didn't have them, or, you know, it'd be kind of a corrupt circumstance, I think, in our world. All right, or more corrupt, I guess. All right, so do we want an example of any of these? Are you guys okay with just working? Do we want to do another one with this one? What's that? You think you're good? Okay. So I'll get you guys our worksheet, and actually it's just one page here today.